Hello, my name is Emil. Um, I've been invited to talk about my clinical exchange in Ireland last summer at the Cork University Emergency Department. I'm a trainee in emergency medicine in the University Hospital of Uppsala. I prepared my presentation in English since we have our guest of honor, Jason, over here, so he could understand at least one lecture during his days here. So that is not his own. Uh, and I also, especially since this presentation is about his neck of the woods in Ireland and his house, the Cork University Hospital Emergency Department. And if you haven't noticed talking to Jason during these days, the Cork people are very patriotic about their county, and they call Cork the real capital of Ireland, and it's the rebel county. Yeah. So now, and I also have a disclaimer. I have an Irish wife from Cork, so now I walk around telling people how great Cork is, but I've been brainwashed. So this is part of that. You might think by the end of this that I work for the Irish Tourist Board, which I don't. Disclaimer: I have no financial support from Ireland. But you might call me a hibernophile, which is the person who likes Irish culture, Irish language, and Ireland in general. And I also have an Irish wife, as I said, and three boys with Irish names. So there you go. This is the Cork University Hospital Emergency Department entrance on my first day. Or it was my last day. I walked around and took a couple of pictures with my phone. But so I had no idea where I was going. I asked that guy, and he's like, "Oh yeah, sure. You're a doctor. I'll bring you in where they have their morning meeting." And I come to this big whiteboard, and the first person I meet there is Jason, standing there 10 minutes before the morning meeting at 8. And he was very friendly and welcoming, which is typical of Cork people, which is a thing I love about Ireland. You're always made to feel welcome. So yeah, there he was, and they gather around this whiteboard every morning. All the patients in the resus, their majors area, the geriatric emergency medicine area are all on that board, and 3 or 4 consultants come, and all the junior doctors that have been working nights can approach Jason, who's always 10 minutes early, about if they're unsure about a patient, what they're gonna do, and they can make a plan. And then they have a formal group. They actually close the area off, and they have a group handover. And every doctor who has a patient just says 1 or 2 sentences and just make sure there's a plan for every patient in the department, which I thought was really good, because then you're kind of forced to be concise, handover, and there is a plan for the patient, and yeah, it just made everything a bit more efficient, because in Sweden I think we hand over person to person. Like I sit down in the morning if I'm going on a shift, and I tell these are my patients, and you do person to person. But here you have the consultants present, so there's a lot of knowledge around, and you have really thought what you want to do with your patients that you have. So I thought that was good. So they have a morning meeting at 8 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon, which I thought was a good idea. And a big whiteboard like this. So maybe something to bring home to Sweden. I don't know. Yeah. No, how I ended up here at the whiteboard was that we can do 3 months abroad as a clinical exchange during our training. So I thought Cork is abroad, so I'll go there. Because my wife is from there and we have grandparents there and stuff. So it's great. And I've heard about Jason from colleagues of mine. They've 3 of them have actually attended his ATACC course and come home, and they were telling there's this guy who lives in a place called West Cork, and it sounds absolutely epic. And he has a pickup truck, and he goes and picks up patients everywhere. That's like I have to see this for myself. So that's how I ended up in the Cork ED. And yeah, first person I meet there was Jason, and I was there July and August last year, and it was a really like eye-opening experience for me because it's a mature emergency medicine system. Emergency medicine has been around, I don't know how many years in Ireland, but 60s, 70s, yeah, probably. So they really know what they're doing. Um, and there's some other legends in these pictures besides Jason. Here's Jeff Mulcraney, who I got to know, who's a senior trainee, really good doctor. He right there, he's coming off a week of nights, which is they go on at 10 p.m. and then they work till 8 a.m. and they do that 7 nights in a row. And so I know what you're thinking. We shouldn't complain in Sweden. And he said, "So you get into it." Was his when I asked him like, "How do you do that? How do you function at the end?" But because we do like 2 or 3 nights in a row maximum in Sweden, but he was able to do it. Really good guy. And this is Dr. Frank Leader, who was in. You only see his back here in red, but he was in charge of the in-house education for all the trainees. Really inspiring and motivational doctor as well. Really nice guy. He was really nice to me when I was there. So and really encouraging always. And this guy over here, Ivor O'Sullivan, he made this website that Jason talked about too. That is really cool. If you haven't looked at that, you should really do that at this web page. It's a straightforward website where you can go in and look at all kinds of guidelines, and they have all kinds of support and things, and they have like advice for parents of sick children. And you can just like with the QR code for different things. I thought that was a brilliant idea. And I like this quote too that he put at the top. True compassion means not only feeling another patient's pain, but also being moved to help relieve it. I thought that was good. Anyway, so there I was in my Oxford shirt and khaki pants, feeling like an idiot. I wasn't wearing scrubs like everybody else. And I was sent off to the admin office to make sure I have all my papers in line for being there the ensuing weeks. And then or before I went to the admin office, we continued the morning routine. Once you finish there at the majors and resource board, you go over to a place called RASTA, which stands for Rapid Assessment Streaming Triage Treatment Area. They have like small cubicles and chairs for basically the walking wounded or the green triage, like that don't need a bed, which I thought was a good idea because you have a limited space in an emergency department. So not everybody needs to be in a bed. And they try to see patients as quickly as possible there because most of them can probably go home or follow up with their general practitioner. So I thought that was kind of a novel idea that you don't need a bed for every patient, because that's how we do in Sweden. Like the people sit even if they're really sick in the waiting room, and then nobody's really looking in the waiting room if somebody's getting worse. Here they're in plain sight, and the nurses and the doctors walk by and they can see if somebody is getting worse. They go to that person first, of course. And they've been triaged and they've taken their vitals, and then they sit and wait to see a doctor. So I thought that was pretty good. I was told that they started with that around COVID. It's pretty new, yeah. Uh, but I thought it was a pretty good idea, since in an emergency department you don't have unlimited space. This is what it looked like. And then I went to the admin office and I was there trying to fill out forms and stuff. And Jason walks in, screw this admin stuff, come to recess, I have an interesting case. Uh, there was an elderly lady who had fallen on her outstretched hand, and the x-ray and the hand looks like that. And I was like, okay, I did my orthopedics rotation 2 years ago and haven't had much orthopedic exposure since. Which is the honest truth. In Uppsala, we don't take a lot of orthopedic patients. And so I was like, is that a Colles fracture or a Smith's fracture? Um, and he said, okay. And he had two big NATO guys with them, paramedics who were training there following him for the weeks. So he's like, these are your, like, big guys. These are your assistants. Fix the fracture. I was like, okay, I'll do the procedural sedation. So he was doing that, and she was ready. I was like, okay, go for it. So I was like, all right, here we go. I was like, okay, you hold here, one of the guys, and then the other guy hold here. And then I was like trying to put it's like, that's not how you do it. He's like, back off. And then he just took the arm, basically broke it again, it felt like, and then pulled it like this, and then like this. I was like, okay, he's done this before, and I need more experience and more exposure to orthopedics. And there's the Colles and the Smith fracture, and you can remember the D deformity, which is like a dinner fork and it's dorsally displaced. I thought that was good. And this is how the Jason did this kind of hard. I was like, oh, watch her wrist. I was thinking to myself. But it was a good result. The x-ray looked much better afterwards. And this is a little bit about the organization in the ED. I was kind of inspired by just seeing how they organize themselves and like how the workflow through the emergency department is. So first your triage, and then you go either to Rasta, pediatrics, the geriatric medicine, emergency medicine. They have 4 beds allocated to the elderly, frail, and the geriatrics consultants come down from the house and see those patients, and then decide if they need to be in hospital or they can link up with services in the community, which I thought was really good. They have like what I thought was like kind of like a smaller trauma bed. It's like 6 beds there in the middle, which is usually somebody has a smaller injury or extremity fracture or something like that. They have, I think it was 2 procedure rooms where they can take in patients, roll them in there if they need to do a procedure. They have a majors area, which is like single rooms. I think it was like 12 rooms or something like that, or 10 rooms maybe, where the people who needed to be in a bed and have a single room can be. And they have a resus and trauma bay with 4 resuscitation beds, which is the same as we have in Uppsala. They have, here's some pictures, by the way, this is the resus beds that they have. So they 4 spots, I think it was. And they have a clinical decision unit, which is like a short stay, less than 24 hours if you're waiting for radiology or see how it plays out with bloods, etc. And the consultants make a decision, and there's always interns in there in that area, and then there's a consultant in charge of that area. All of these areas have one consultant allocated to them. So one is in CDU, one is in majors, one is in Rasta, and then they rotate. So and then there are minions running around, and then they can go ask the consultant. I thought that was a good system, because then you always have a senior present. This is the morning meeting. They kind of close. There's like they close here close there, and then the most senior trainee like points at the board, and they go through all the patients. I thought it was really good. Don't know. And oh yeah, and right across from the ED, they also had emergency ophthalmology, which was good. Anybody with an eye problem, you could refer or consult them fairly easily. And in resus, they had this toy, which I thought was cool. You could measure the intraocular pressure. So on a couple trauma patients, I tried to do that. And one of them had like 20 millimercury in the left and 50 in the right. So I was like, all right, now we might have to release the pressure here. So I called the ophthalmologist and was like, okay, I'm coming. Don't do anything. I was like, no, I'll wait for you. Don't worry. And then he came and it was like really swollen. It was a head injury. And he told me, like, when you press like that and you open it when it's swollen and you do the measurements, then you'll increase the pressure. So we didn't need to cut that day. But he's like, good try though. And then another memorable case. I was working with another inspiring doctor from South Africa, I think Tammy. One morning she's like, we have an interesting case in resus. And it was a elderly man who owned a campground in a beautiful part of the world called Allihies in deep West Cork. This is Allihies here. And I knew exactly where he was coming from because it's a special part of my life, because when me and my wife cycled from Cork and around this peninsula, I proposed to her about right there. So I knew exactly where Allihies was. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, man, big Irish man from Allihies in his Irish jumper, white curly hair. And he said he was walking and it was dark and there was a hole in the ground and he fell and it really hurt and he couldn't stand on the leg afterwards, so he just called for help. And then he saw a bone piece sticking out. So this is a grade 3 open tib-fib fracture. So that was like, it was great to get a bit more orthopedic exposure when I was there. So I learned that antibiotics is really important. Tetanus is important. We washed it out a little bit, but you're not supposed to wash it. In Sweden, I've learned since that they like to do the debridement and stuff up in surgery, but we washed it out anyway, and we put some wet gauze, and then Tammy gave him ketamine, and then I pulled here and she pulled there, and she put it back roughly into place, and then we put a plaster over the whole leg, and then he went straight up to surgery. That was exciting, I thought. So hopefully we'll be doing that soon in Uppsala. Yeah. And I remember this big man getting the ketamine. He got a bit worried, so I was standing there holding his hand and talking to him, trying to calm him down. And my hand was like dwarfed in his hand. He's a big guy. Yeah. But he was very friendly, like all Cork people, despite his injury. Oh yeah, this is just more about fractures. And then they have a big pre-hospital interest, as you might have gathered, in Ireland, or in Cork. Mainly thanks to Jason, I think. So I thought I was pretty inspired by that. And the first thing I heard about Jason before actually meeting him was that he was the head of the Medical Cork, and that he was also on a volunteer on call 24/7 in his home in Clonakilty. So they could call him when he's home with his family. Oh, there's a priority 1 alarm close by. and he'll go out with his truck that he has parked at his house and go help before the ambulance comes from Cork, which I think is pretty admirable. And inspiring. And Medical Cork, I learned from Jason also, they have a telemedical support unit. So there's like a big phone by the head nurse station, and the first thing you hear that time you hear that phone is like, okay, there's some kind of alarm going off, something big is happening now. But they're calling in from somewhere to get advice, and the senior member of the emergency physicians answer the phone and give them advice. So it could be somebody out on a ship, and it's like, do we need to send a helicopter to get this person, or can we wait until they get into port? So I thought that was pretty brilliant. And with that, they kind of guarantee direct access to specialist medical advice in the emergency department. And so it's usually a senior registrar, which is like CNST, or a consultant specialist who answers that phone. And these are the people who can call that phone. So anybody in the territorial waters of Ireland, the Irish Coast Guard, the Defence Forces, the National Ambulance Service, Dublin Fire Brigade, the lifeguards, who are at the beaches, and the mountain rescue. And here they are in action, training to retrieve people from boats. Yeah. How am I doing on time? Still loads of time. So another memorable case was, I think it was either my first or second week. I just taken my first patient in the morning, and Jason walks up to me. There's a cardiac arrest alarm about 5 minutes away from here. Do you want to come? And I thought for a second, yes, I want to come. Okay, well, let's go, was his answer. So I put down the chart I was holding. I was just about to go into a patient, and then tried to keep up with him out to his pickup truck. And he turned on the sirens and honked the whole way and speed really fast. I'm like, this is really exciting. And then we got to the house, and there was a 65-year-old man who had been found on the floor lifeless. And he told me in the car, usually when they're found like this, is the prognosis is not great, but we're gonna try and do what we can. And I think the fire brigade, when the alarm goes out in Cork, whoever is closest is go there. So there were some fire guys there first, and then the paramedics had come after, and they were already there, and they had started CPR. And then Jason opened his truck, and he's like, can you grab that bag? And I was like, 20 kilos. I'm like, yeah, I got it. And tried to keep up with Jason out of the shed behind the house. And that was the fully automated CPR that he was showing yesterday. So I saw that in action. That was really cool. And I was like, oh, this is something. Like cardiac arrest at somebody's home on their own floor. I never seen that before. I only see them in the recess room when they come in. And then he turns to me. He's like, okay, you take over the airway. And I was like, okay. And the paramedics is like bag masking, and then it's like, you got everything you need here. So I'm like, okay, never seen this laryngoscope before, but I had done my 3 months of ear, nose, and throat rotation in Uppsala about a year earlier. So I knew how to intubate, but then I never done it on the floor before, as Jason saw pretty quickly. I was struggling. And like shaking from adrenaline, my whole body basically. And then, but I got the tube in between the vocal cords, and I was like, oh, thank God. And then it's like pushing it down, and then it's like, better get it down there. So, and then a bit too much, and he just says to me, Emil, I think you're down a bit deep. I was like, oh shit, I forgot about the two black things that kind of stay between the vocal cords. So then I realized my mistake. So then I tried to pull it back, and then I pulled the whole tube out. And I was like, okay, Jason was like, okay, I'll take over now. but unfortunately the patient didn't make it. But then I saw Jason talking to the wife afterwards, and that was really well done. I was impressed by that. The emotional support you gave after when you gave the bad news. That we did what we could, but the patient has unfortunately passed away. And I remember her saying, it's like, oh, he was so worried about his money. He was on a conference call with the States, and like we were gonna retire now, and it was just a sad story. Yeah. And then I remember packing up the car, we were putting the stuff back, and I saw the son coming from work and running in. So you remember those patients for sure. But it's good, like Jason says, that a lot of people in Ireland, they really do that in Ireland. They really educate like basic life support, and I think that's a good thing that we could be better at in Sweden. I think that like yeah, everybody should be encouraged to do basic life support, because I don't know if CPR ongoing by the family when they found him or not, but there probably was, and they have a much better chance of survival. And we were pretty close to the hospital too, so if it wasn't that he was found, like maybe after an hour or two, he could have made it, another time. Anyway, uh, and it was really eye-opening to me, because we need to be ready in Sweden. Uh, that we need to be able to intubate pre-hospital. We need to be able to intubate in our own emergency departments, not just stand and bag and ventilate and wait for the cavalry to come down from SIVA or IVA, the anesthetics. Like, we need to do that ourselves, because all of a sudden you're standing there and you need to be able to do it and train to do it and do what you're trained to do, really. So it's important. And then, because the patient or the family of the patient doesn't care that you did your rotation a year ago and you haven't done it since. Like, so we need to keep practicing and always be ready. Anyway, that's coming towards the end of my presentation. We brought the three boys with us. This is Killian, 2.5, Liam, 6, and Kevin, who was about 4 months when we went over. And this is in Kerry, where my wife used to go camping every summer as a child. So we retraced those grounds, went to Casa Gregory, the Maharis, absolutely beautiful. This is the English market in central Cork. I really like food, so I love going there and just looking at all the food. And that's a castle we visited, kind of Blarney Castle. I kissed the stone. I have the gift of the gab now. Isn't that the story? You're supposed to stone. There's like a special stone you have to kiss it, hanging underneath, and if you kiss that, you're able to talk afterwards, like all Irish people. So I did that. This is my wife's friend's husband, Thomas, who is a primary school teacher and also a hobby farmer. He has a couple of cows next to their house and a tractor, which my boys thought was fantastic. And this is Killian eating an apple in Casa Gregory. Yeah, but it was great to be in the Cork ED and seeing like how a fully fledged emergency medicine system works, and for my family to see the grandparents, and I could avoid mother-in-law in the ED. It was great. So if you get the chance, go abroad. Yeah.